Hey everybody, in this tutorial I'm going to teach you how to make pillows better than the competition, because I know there's like 20 fucking pillow tutorials on YouTube, but we're going to do it physics-based using cloth simulation, and then a bit of sculpting with the cloth brush, and then we're going to texture it, etc. So let me show you, matter of fact, de facto, the best pillow tutorial, and I only have like 10 minutes to do this before I gotta get out of here, so let's do it quickly. First of all, we're going to set this up for a simulation. So edit mode, I'm going to add in a loop cut, that's Control R. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these two faces, the top and bottom. I'm going to scale them in a bit, and then I'm going to scale them inwards a lot, okay? And you want to think of this as kind of like the base or initial state of your simulation. If you want it to be a long pillow, like a big rectangle, make it look like that. If you want it to be bigger, make it bigger. But this is just the initial state, okay? Once you have that set up, just add in a bunch of geometry with loop cuts or subdivisions or whatever you feel like is necessary. I'm just going to add in loop cuts, and then when we're done with that, probably just throw in one more subdivision, okay? And you're thinking, okay, what's the point of this? The point is we're going to do physics, right? So physics tab, cloth, if I can find it, boom. We run the cloth simulation, and there you go. The reason this is falling is because the only force acting on it, of course, is gravity. It's acting uniformly, and there's no collisions or pressure or anything, so of course it's going to fall. So a couple things we need to do to dress our simulation in some sense. First thing, field weights take gravity down to 0. This is going to make it so it doesn't fall, because gravity is now having effect of 0. Newton would be losing his shit right now. Second thing we need to do is apply pressure, and this is a pressure value that we can actually change during the simulation. So I'm just going to click play, and then as I do this, I'm just going to bump this up, and you can see it's already like it has I guess inwards to outwards pressure. You want to imagine that there's a high pressure substance in here and it wants to escape. I don't know if you took a physics class, but you know, things go from high to low pressure. And as we do this, we can say how big is that pressure going to be. Of course, if we go a bit too far, like, I don't know, 20, it's probably going to look a bit too inflated. So, I mean, I guess it kind of depends on your simulation. It seems like this is a pretty good start, 8 divisions. And at any point in the simulation, by the way, so, you know, you could actually play it and, you know, have it be like a whole like video thing that you render. But at any point, what we can do, like here, I'm going to apply the modifier. So now it's actually a mesh looking like this, and then we can actually stack some more stuff. So subdivision surface to make it cleaner, and then shade smooth. And let's actually apply that, okay? And this is where a lot of, you know, pillow tutorials tend to end. Of course, they take longer to say it, but this is where most of them end. What we're going to do from this point on is just kind of like level more layers of detail and stuff through sculpting, through materials and stuff like that. Okay, so once you have this base simulation, go to the sculpting tab, and we are going to use cloth brush. Why? Because it looks like cloth, and that's useful for a pillow. So again, F is for the size of the brush, Shift F is for the strength of the brush, and that's pretty much all you need to know, because this brush is ridiculous, and you kind of need 0 talent to use it, right? So you can just drag cloth here or whatever, and I find that the more kind of ruffles you have along the edge, the more kind of clothy and pillow-like it looks. And again, the more inflated it is, you know, probably more towards the middle, the less kind of deformation we're going to have, okay? So a couple things to make this look better. I'm just going to play around. I don't have much of a plan. Inflate brush is what's going to make this look like it's super soft. Of course, you want to make that bigger when we use it. It's going to make it look super soft, or like a deformed ball sack, the way I did it. I guess let's take down the strength so it's not as intense, and maybe we can also use the plane mode so it's actually applying uniformly across like here. So this is a great way to add like volume to your pillow very quickly, so just like that. So we have more volume in the middle. We can also do the opposite of inflation, which is pinching, if I can find. Yeah, you could do pinching on the corners, probably not plane, but using radial mode. So it's just pinching wherever we say. And this is, again, just to add a bit more detail and roughness. This is way too intense on the corners. So I'm just adding in tiny details here, nothing crazy. And we can always go back and, you know, fix or switch this because it's sculpting based. But without getting too in the weeds, you just kind of, you basically just keep switching between these brushes and using them until it looks good, right? But you can see already we've added in a good amount of detail. Just something that makes it look like cloth. And I'm just going to do a bit more before we just kind of move on here. Okay, Boom. And one more thing is if it's like super intense in one area, I think S is smooth brush. No, it seems like S is scale. One of these is the smooth brush. You can use it to smooth. Where is smooth brush? There it is, smooth brush. And you can use it to smooth some areas, probably with a lot less strength. Just like that. Okay, I think we're done with sculpting. I'm done talking about sculpting. Now, kind of like final details before we go into the shading part. This is going to have a seam along the middle. Normally, UV unwrapping and stuff like this is kind of difficult because you're trying to hide the seams. No, with pillows, it's actually perfect because we want those seams to be very, very visible. Because cloth wraps around this and there would be a inconsistency, a discontinuity, okay? So I'm just going to select the middle edge, or I'm going to try to guess which one the middle edge is. This is going to be our seam, so once we have it selected, right-click, mark seam, and then in UV editing, we're not going to do anything fancy. Select everything, you unwrap, and it's going to divide this into two different sections, the top of the match, or not the mattress. You can use this method to make mattresses too. Top of the pillow, bottom of the pillow, okay? That's our basic UV unwrap. And just to make it a bit more kind of punchy before we add in our texture, I'm just going to select this and then maybe Control plus to make it a bit bigger, the selection. And I'm just going to scale it inwards and like on the Z-axis just a bit. This might be like a bit more of a extreme version of what I want, but you can see now we've like very well defined the seam in modeling. And I guess I should save this as a really good pillow. Boom. Okay, so rest of this is basically shading. So shading workspace, just got to quickly set this up. I'm going to remove the light, switch this over to cycles. Of course, the reason I'm doing this is one, for realism, and two, we can actually apply our HDRI lighting without any scene lights because it looks better and it's going to look correct. So ideally, you pick a HDRI that is an interior because that's usually where you see pillows. Of course, other lighting conditions make sense, but it's just not where you see pillows usually, so it's going to look weird. Okay, so now we have our basic lighting set up, and already this is like a fine pillow if you want it to be this way, but just a couple things. First of all, roughness. Make it bigger because pillows aren't shiny. They're made of cloth. There's a lot of normal detail and stuff like that, making it not very reflective. Unless you have a leather pillow, but, if you have leather pillows, you're probably into other leather things, and, you're probably not watching Blender tutorials, more like BDSM tutorials. What was I talking about? Okay, yeah, how do I make this look like a pillow? Well, first of all, what I did is I went to Google Chrome and I typed in, by the way, you can use whatever search engine. I typed in cloth seamless texture, and there were a bunch of these. You can download any of them. Each of them will give you a different look. I downloaded this one. It even has a watermark in it, but you can't notice it. And we can also download another. So we're just going to use a texture as the base of our material, and then we're going to do some stuff to it. So first of all, let's use the one I was using originally. You can just drag it in here, and then if you connect it to the base color, you can see already looks pretty pillow-like, except for the watermark. And because we have a seam because of the UV unwrap, it's going to naturally be discontinuous here, but that's exactly what you want, remember. And to make this a different scale, I'm going to use UV coordinates. Again, nothing should change because it's secretly using UV coordinates. And then the only thing I'm going to do, throw in a vector math, set it to scale, and then the bigger the number, the more tiles or the more repetition we have. And since it's seamless, it doesn't really matter what number we pick. Okay, so cool, we have that. Now we want it to actually drive kind of like the normals or what it looks like, a lighting based. Again, you want to pick an image without a watermark, but what can you do? Okay, so I'm going to duplicate this, use this here, and you might be thinking, okay, why did you make a duplicate? You can just use this group a bunch of times. Well, it's because I'm going to unlink this, set it to non-color data. So this is kind of like the same chain, although this one is sRGB. This one's non-color data. If you didn't click that 2 button, any change that we would have done, let me just show you, any change that we would have done would have carried over to both of them. So that's why I unlinked them. And non-color is what you usually want to use whenever you're using a normal, or trying to use normal information or create it. So non-color, we're going to send this through the height, and then you're going to see it's going to generate a normal based off this image. Connect it to the normal. Let's see what it looks like. Bit intense. So we could either turn down the strength here, but I'm not going to do that since I actually want to layer a bunch of stuff. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to multiply it by a small number, where if it's 0, we have nothing, and if it's that, it's a little, 1 is a lot. So maybe 0.05 or something, okay? So now the cloth is actually catching the light and everything like that. Next thing I want to do is just add even like a third layer. So we had cloth, then we had sculpting, and now a third layer of like cloth deformation. And I'm just going to use that using noise texture that we're going to turn into normal coordinates in the same method as before. So I'm going to take our previous normal and then add onto this chain, in other words, incorporate this noise. So now you can see we kind of have these ruffles along with the original texture, which you can see adds quite a bit of detail. So again, this thing is what's adding this. You don't want it to be too small, otherwise it looks weird. So something like 3. And again, detail, same thing. If you make the detail too big, it kind of looks like a rock. So something like this. Add in a tiny bit of distortion since the cloth would curl in on itself a little. And just so you see a bit of before and after. This is before, this is after. Just adds a good amount of detail that we can make slightly less intense. In the same way, we multiplied by like 0.5 or something, okay? So this is the base of our pillow. It's looking pretty good at any point, by the way. And, you know, if we swap the texture, we have to do it for both of these. But let me just show you how easy it is to do. You can just drag in a different image. So this is a different texture. I'm going to connect this here. I'm going to make a second version that we're going to unlink again, set this to non-color, connect this here, and then all we have to do is just swap these out. So now we have a new thing for these. Is this correct? No. We want this to be connected here and get rid of that. So now you can see we've swapped out the pillow texture, and you can do the scaling and everything, and it's procedural in that sense. In fact, I kind of like this pillow a bit more, so I'm going to keep it. I'm going to use a scale of 2 or something like that. And you could even rotate this if you wanted to, just using like vector rotate. So let me just show you how to do that quickly. I think you put it before, might be after. Vector rotate, increase the angle, and it will rotate it. And you could change the axis and everything. But okay, and again, we have our seam and everything. Last thing I want to talk about is you're going to notice that in solid view, it kind of looks much more refined. You can see the seam. You can really see kind of the cloth deformation and stuff like that. And this is because we kind of have this kind of matte cap kind of look to it, which gets really intense when we enable cavity. I want to somehow bring that into the rendered view. Even though this is supposed to look soft, I just want it to have a tiny, tiny bit more punch. Wow, this node group's looking crazy. I'll fix it up later. To do that, what we are going to do, there's a couple ways. You could use something like Fresnel to really catch the all the details. You can see, we can really see it here, but that's not real. It's not realistic unless you're making a globe or an earth or something like that. So instead, why do I have this? This should be going here. Boom. So instead, what I'm gonna do, here we go. Instead, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use Ambient Occlusion node. This is going to show where all the self-shadowing is happening. So you can see there's a bit of darkness on the seam, etc. And of course, it's not super pungent. Is that the word? It's not super... I can't really see it is what I'm trying to say. So I'm going to take power and increase it for a number above 1. And you can see the bigger this is, the more intense all these details are going to be. And you're thinking, okay, how do we incorporate this? It's not going to be in the normal. In fact, all we need to do is we just mix RGB. And then we're going to mix it with the ambient occlusion, set it to multiply. And what it's effectively going to do is it's going to, so this is before and after, it's going to darken wherever we have an ambient occlusion, and we can make that more intense. So this is before, after, it's a bit subtle, but we can make it like way more intense. So before, after, it just adds in a bit more punch where it's supposed to be darker, where we have the folds and everything. So long story short, I know that it got pretty messy because I kind of just winged it a little. But long story short, we took our UV coordinates, we rotated them, we scaled them, and sent them to these seamless textures. So it doesn't really matter what the scale is. We can pick any number, and it should be fine. We sent it to these textures. One of them is non-color for normal that we then mixed with a bunch of stuff, sent it through bump. And then the other one was for the texture that we then mixed using multiply with the ambient occlusion, right? And then we just kind of threw it together with a principled BSDF, and it looks pretty good. So this is how you make a pillow. Again, you don't want to do, if you want to make a long pillow like this, you don't want to do it here, right? You want to do it before you even do the simulation, etc. But there you go. You got pillows. You can duplicate them. You can stack them. It will look good. By the way, since they're like near each other and the ambient occlusion is going to be intense, if you are planning to do that, by the way, just one thing to note. make the ambient occlusion power less intense, so something closer to 1. But anyways, that's a tutorial. I gotta get out of here. I want to say thank you to all the patrons. Of course, this blend file that I'm going to clean up because this is a disaster zone. I'm going to make the blend file, the project file, the clean version, available over at the Patreon. You can download it there, including all other blend files, which is a couple hundred blend files, I think. You can get those as well. Additionally, exclusive tutorials that I do not post on either channel, Discord access, behind the scenes, early access, all of that exists over there, so check it out if that is something you care about or are remotely interested in. For everybody else, hope you enjoyed the free tutorial. I think the credits have had long enough to scroll, so I am out of here with arguably the most chaotic but best pillow tutorial in Blender history.